Dean Martin was walking past the same park bench every morning when he noticed the elderly woman who sat there alone, feeding pigeons with stale bread from a paper bag. And what started as a simple good morning greeting would become one of the most beautiful friendships of his life, proving that sometimes the greatest families are the ones we choose rather than the ones we're born into, and that loneliness can be healed by the smallest acts of consistent kindness. It was Tuesday morning, September 12th, 1974, and Dean Martin was taking his regular early morning walk through Roxbury Park in Beverly Hills. Dean had developed this routine over the past year as part of his effort to maintain his health and find quiet time for reflection away from the demands of his entertainment career and busy family life. Dean's morning walks usually began around 6:30 a.m., when the park was nearly empty except for a few joggers and dog walkers. Dean appreciated the peaceful atmosphere and the opportunity to think about his upcoming projects, his children's activities, and the various personal and professional decisions he faced as one of America's most popular entertainers. For the past 3 weeks, Dean had noticed an elderly woman who sat on the same park bench every morning, apparently feeding pigeons and watching the sunrise. The woman appeared to be in her 70s, with carefully styled gray hair and clothing that suggested she had once lived a more prosperous lifestyle than her current circumstances seemed to indicate. What caught Dean's attention was not just the woman's daily presence in the park, but her obvious loneliness. She sat by herself for hours, speaking only to the pigeons that gathered around her bench, and she seemed to have no interaction with other park visitors or passers-by. Dean had grown up in a close-knit Italian-American family where elderly relatives were respected and cared for by the entire extended family. The sight of this woman sitting alone every day reminded Dean of his own grandmother, who had lived with his family during his childhood and had been a source of wisdom, stories, and unconditional love throughout his youth. On this particular Tuesday morning, Dean decided to approach the elderly woman and see if she might welcome some company during her daily park visits. "Good morning," Dean said as he approached her bench. "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" The woman looked up with surprise and a slight wariness that suggested she wasn't accustomed to strangers speaking to her. "Yes, it is," she replied politely. "The mornings are my favorite time in the park. It's so peaceful before all the noise and activity begin." Dean asked if he could sit on the bench with her for a few minutes. As Dean settled beside her, he noticed that she was indeed feeding pigeons with pieces of bread that she broke carefully into small portions. "They depend on me," the woman explained, gesturing toward the pigeons. "I've been coming here every morning for 2 years, and they know I'll be here with breakfast for them." Dean was touched by the woman's gentle care for the birds and her obvious pleasure in having creatures that depended on her daily presence. "I'm Dean, by the way," he said, extending his hand in greeting. "I'm Rose," the woman replied, shaking his hand with a grip that was firm despite her advanced age. "Rose Campanella. Are you visiting the neighborhood, or do you live nearby?" Dean explained that he lived in Beverly Hills and that his morning walks often brought him through the park. He was curious about Rose's story and asked how long she had been living in the area. Rose's answer revealed the outline of a life that had included both happiness and loss. She had moved to Beverly Hills 40 years earlier with her husband Anthony, who had owned a small but successful restaurant that served authentic Italian cuisine to entertainment industry figures and local residents. They had lived comfortably and had been active in their local Catholic church and Italian-American community. But Anthony had died 5 years earlier, and Rose's circumstances had changed dramatically. The restaurant had been sold to pay Anthony's medical bills, and Rose was now living on a small pension in a 1-bedroom apartment several blocks from the park. Her 2 adult children lived on the East Coast and visited rarely, leaving Rose with limited social contact and few activities to fill her days. "The park is really my social life now," Rose admitted with a wry smile. "The pigeons are good listeners, and they don't judge me for talking to myself. Dean was moved by Rose's loneliness and her graceful acceptance of her circumstances. He was also impressed by her dignity and her determination to maintain routines and connections, even if those connections were with birds rather than people. Dean decided to make Rose's bench a regular stop during his morning walks, and over the following weeks, their brief conversations became a highlight of both their days. Dean learned more about Rose's life, her marriage to Anthony, her pride in their restaurant's success, and her sadness about being disconnected from her children and grandchildren. Rose, for her part, appreciated Dean's kindness and attention without initially realizing who he was. Dean introduced himself only by his first name, and his casual clothing and relaxed demeanor during their morning meetings didn't suggest that he was a famous entertainer. As their friendship developed, Dean began bringing coffee and pastries from a nearby bakery to share during their park bench conversations. Rose was delighted by these small gestures and began looking forward to their meetings with an enthusiasm that had been missing from her daily routine for years. After about a month of regular morning visits, Rose mentioned that she had been feeling unwell and was concerned about an upcoming doctor's appointment. She had no one to drive her to the medical center, and she was worried about taking public transportation while feeling weak and dizzy. Dean immediately offered to drive Rose to her appointment, and when she initially declined his offer due to concerns about imposing on his kindness, Dean insisted that helping friends was never an imposition. Dean's assistance with Rose's medical appointment led to deeper involvement in her daily life. Dean learned that Rose was dealing with several health issues related to diabetes and high blood pressure, conditions that required regular monitoring and medication that was expensive and difficult for her to afford on her limited income. Dean quietly arranged for Rose's medical expenses to be covered through his personal foundation, ensuring that she received the care she needed without the financial stress that had been preventing her from seeking proper treatment. But Dean's support went far beyond financial assistance. He began visiting Rose at her apartment, bringing groceries and prepared meals, and spending time listening to her stories about her life with Anthony and their years running the restaurant. Rose's apartment was small, but immaculately maintained, filled with photographs and mementos from her marriage and her family's history. Dean enjoyed hearing Rose's stories about the entertainment figures who had been regular customers at their restaurant. And Rose appreciated having someone who understood the entertainment industry and could share in her pride about their restaurant's former success. As their friendship deepened, Dean realized that Rose had become more than just a person he helped. She had become a source of wisdom and perspective that enriched his own life. Rose's stories about marriage, family, and the importance of appreciating everyday moments reminded Dean of values that sometimes got lost in the pressures and distractions of his celebrity lifestyle. Dean began including Rose in some of his family activities, bringing her to his home for holiday dinners and introducing her to his children as Grandma Rose. Dean's children were initially surprised by their father's friendship with an elderly woman they had never met, but they quickly grew fond of Rose's warmth, her stories, and her genuine interest in their lives. Rose blossomed in the environment of Dean's large, active family. She helped with cooking for family gatherings, shared stories about Italian traditions and recipes, and provided the kind of grandmother presence that Dean's children had been missing since their own grandparents had passed away. Dean's wife Jean was initially curious about Dean's decision to include a stranger in their family activities, but she quickly understood that Rose's presence added something valuable to their household. Rose's gratitude for their kindness was genuine and touching, and her contributions to their family meals and celebrations made their gatherings more meaningful and connected to traditions that honored both family and heritage. Dean also arranged for Rose to attend some of his performances, providing her with VIP seating and introducing her to his colleagues as a special friend. Rose was amazed and delighted to discover that her kind park bench companion was one of America's most famous entertainers. But their friendship had already been established on such a solid foundation that Dean's celebrity status only added to her pride in their relationship, rather than changing its fundamental nature. Rose's attendance at Dean's shows became legendary among his staff and fellow performers. She would arrive dressed in her finest clothing, carrying flowers for Dean, and radiating the kind of pride and joy that only comes from someone who truly loves and supports the person they're watching. Dean would often dedicate songs to Grandma Rose during his performances, and Rose would beam with pride from her front row seat, sometimes wiping away tears when Dean sang songs that held special meaning for their friendship. The relationship between Dean and Rose also created opportunities for Rose to reconnect with her own family. Dean encouraged Rose to reach out to her children and grandchildren on the East Coast, and he helped arrange for them to visit Rose in California. When Rose's children met Dean and learned about the care he had been providing for their mother, they were deeply grateful, but also somewhat embarrassed that a stranger had been fulfilling family responsibilities that they had neglected due to distance and busy lives. Dean never criticized Rose's children for their previous absence, but he helped them understand how much their mother valued family connection and how much their regular contact could contribute to her happiness and well-being. Rose's son and daughter began calling her weekly and visiting more frequently, and Dean's example inspired them to take a more active role in ensuring their mother's comfort and care. As Rose's health improved under Dean's care and her family connection strengthened, she became more active and engaged in community activities. Dean helped Rose find volunteer opportunities with local charities that served elderly residents, giving her a sense of purpose and social connection that extended beyond their friendship. Rose also became involved with Dean's own charitable activities, helping to organize events and providing insights about the needs of elderly people in the community. Her first-hand experience with loneliness and financial insecurity made her a valuable advocate for programs that supported seniors who lacked family resources or social connections. Dean and Rose's friendship continued for over a decade, until Rose passed away peacefully in 1987 at the age of 86. During her final years, Rose lived in a comfortable assisted living facility that Dean had helped arrange, but she maintained her independence and dignity while having access to the medical care and social activities she needed. At Rose's funeral, Dean delivered the eulogy, speaking about how Rose had taught him that family is about love and care rather than blood relationships, and that the greatest gift we can give or receive is the simple presence of someone who truly cares about our well-being. Dean established a foundation in Rose's memory that provides support for elderly people who are isolated or struggling with limited resources, ensuring that other people in Rose's situation would have access to the assistance and companionship that had transformed her final years. The Rose Campanella Foundation continues to operate today, providing services that include medical assistance, social activities, family reunification support, and companionship programs for elderly residents in the Los Angeles area. Dean often said that his friendship with Rose had been one of the most meaningful relationships of his life, and that Rose's wisdom, gratitude, and resilience had taught him lessons about character and compassion that had made him a better person and a better father. The story of Dean and Rose's friendship became an inspiration for other celebrities and public figures who realized that their resources and influence could be used to make profound differences in the lives of ordinary people who needed support and companionship. If this story of chosen family and the healing power of consistent kindness moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Share this with anyone who needs to know that the greatest families are sometimes the ones we choose rather than the ones we're born into, and that loneliness can be healed by the smallest acts of daily compassion. Have you ever formed a family bond with someone outside your blood relatives? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to ring that notification bell for more incredible stories about the friendships that become family and the love that transcends all boundaries.